Hello, and welcome back to the Strong Collectors Podcast. As you can see, if you're seeing this in person on the YouTube, then you notice that Jordan and I are together for the first time ever on the podcast. Like we said in our last, we kind of teased that we would have some big things coming up. And I did say we would be together for the next podcast. So this
Man
is
of
that
his word.
episode. And that's not all, because I think we're ready to announce that the actual big deal, the reason why Jordan is sitting here with me in person, is we just finished up a interview with the one and only Todd McFarlane. So the next episode that we post is, this post, we're going to be talking about buy, sell, trade. And then the next episode that you're going to hear from us is our interview with Todd McFarlane. So I've got some editing to do with that. We're going to trim it up. We thought we were going to get 30 to 45 minutes with Todd. He ended up talking to us for about 2 hours. So I'm going to condense that down just a little bit for you all, kind of cut out some of the parts where we got a little long-winded. You've got some cool stuff to look forward to in that. He reveals some stuff about the upcoming Spawn movie, or at least as much as he can, gives us some updates there. And then he reveals a new product. So if you're interested in the upcoming works of Todd McFarlane, check it out. I wasn't expecting to get any reveals during the episode, but he was like, oh, hold on one sec, let me go grab this thing, and brings it out, shows it to us for the first time. So
Yeah, and I would say definitely you'd want to check it out on YouTube, I think, because he did a lot of kind of giving us a little tour around the, I guess, kind of his workspace, and we saw some of his office and some early prototypes for figures and a lot of really cool stuff. Really cool guy. And I think you'll definitely at least want to watch some of it on YouTube. But if not, for sure check in, because, of course, we talk toys with Todd. We bring some grievances as well, and just got a little more insight into the whole process there. So thank you. So that was very fun, and we're excited to share it with you.
Yeah. So like I said, that'll be coming out in the next episode. So today we're going to be covering everything you need to know about buying, selling, and trading in the groups, kind of how we go about doing that, how we got started into it, and kind of what we've learned along the lines. We see a lot of posts in the group with the new members, or maybe even members that have just kind of been in the groups that have just kind of posted their collection, and now maybe they're wanting to sell some of it, trade, do those things, and they are pretty often asking the questions of, hey, I want to trade with this person. How do I go about doing that? I want to sell off my collection. What should I do? And we want to use this as that resource to kind of take people here. That way they can kind of listen to everything put out, rather than, I know whenever I try to help somebody, it kind of ends up being like a long text, and then that's followed by several long texts. So I'm hoping this can just be a link that we can share, and it gives you all that information that you need. If there's anything we left out, make sure to comment, tell us what you think we should have added in, and maybe we can add a second episode to this with some of those extra tips and tricks that maybe you guys do that we didn't think about. So I think Jordan's going to hit us with a quick overview.
Yeah, so I guess the way I think about it too would be, how do we sort of share, I guess, the information that we maybe wish we would have had when we started out, when Dakota sent me a text one day with all his toys laid out, and then he told me that people still bought and sold and collected Legends. So I guess I'll preface by saying most of our buying, selling, and trading is done through Facebook. So a lot of our advice and experience stems from that, and we largely focus on that platform because that's probably the easiest way to go about that. We do a little bit of eBay stuff, but again, that's usually for more like higher ticket items,
Right.
or if you find a great deal. But we kind of distilled it down to 5 steps, I would say, to getting on Facebook as far as buying, selling, and trading. So the first one, get on Facebook. A lot of us probably already have one, but once you're on there, you can join some different buy, sell, trade groups. There's a ton of them. I mean, we can rattle off some of them later, get more into the specifics. But if you just search Marvel Legends collectors or McFarlane or Black Series, Star Wars, you should find quite a few. After that, another key step would be to have a PayPal, because most of the times when you do transactions, you are going to be using PayPal both to buy and sell, and we can come back to that as well. The other fourth step I would say is research or inventory what you have. So if you're already starting off with a small collection like Dakota and I had, you can sort of see which ones maybe are valuable, which ones you want, which ones you maybe want to update, all that good stuff. And then also what figures you might be wanting that have come out. And the last step, of course, would be to begin making some trades and sales. And that is a good way to start to build up some references, because that'll be important. Once you get along and you kind of get a reputation in the groups or people vouch for you, that makes it easier for sure to continue trading and having that reputation built up. So I would say that's kind of the 5-step overview that I've experienced as far as doing buying and trading and selling on Facebook.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all those like specifics of each of the steps that Jordan mentioned, and we'll go even more in depth. Like each one of those steps can have like sub bullet points.
Steps.
Yep. So, like I said, this is going to be a resource. This should have everything you need to know, and hopefully more than you need to know, so that there's nothing left out there to question for you. So, was there more you had on that, or do you want to get right into buying?
No, I mean, I think yeah, getting right into buying, we can probably talk about more of the specifics of that. But
all right, so
you take us away.
Yeah, so I think buying is a good place to start, because it kind of, like, you're joining the groups, you're seeing all these new things. I mean, at least with when Jordan and I joined up, like he said, we did have a small collection ourselves from when we were kids of the older Toy Biz and early Hasbro. So then seeing the groups, seeing other people's collections, seeing those updated figures kind of got us back in. And we end up selling a lot of our original collection, still keeping some, but we've done a lot of buying. And with that, some of those figures that we bought, we sell and we trade. So I figured buying would be a good place to start. And with buying, one of the number one things that I think you should always keep in mind when buying in the groups especially is to always use PayPal goods and services. So there's the two categories within PayPal that you can use to purchase things online or from people. You can either pay friends and family or goods and services. So goods and services is going to be your go-to. Like, I mean, unless I'm buying from Jordan or like two other people in the group that I've known and like we've actually had conversations and like I know them personally, I'm always going to use goods and services, because goods and services is the only way to protect yourself as the buyer. So you'll see this all the time in the groups of somebody bought something, friends and family, and then they never got their figure. So say you want to buy the new Spider-Man, you find Steve online, he's selling Spider-Man for $50. You're like, wow, that's a really good deal. Usually he goes for a lot more than that. You send him $50, friends and family. Steve deletes his Facebook account. You never hear from him again. You can't really get your money back. I mean, maybe, but the chances are slim. Whereas if you had paid goods and services, you can file a claim with PayPal. PayPal will refund you that money, and then you'll get your money back. It'll be a little bit of a hassle to have done, but at least you're protected and your money is secure. You kind of have that peace of mind. Same thing with Venmo, Cash App, whatever other ways people are asking to receive money. People argue that you can protect your Venmo. I still am wary of that.
Yeah, there is a like a business buying goods feature on Venmo. I've never heard too much. I think, just to be safe, I would stick with PayPal. The thing about PayPal, the goods and services, is it does charge the seller a small fee. So some people this is something that I dealt with too when I started, was people say, oh, well, you cover the fees or whatever. I guess when I sell, I usually just include that, because
Right.
typically in my experience, the seller covers the fees because it's like protecting the buyer. But some people don't want to do it just because of the fee, which is
Right.
like $2. It's
Yeah.
like,
I think
is
it's a
it?
6% fee or something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, the most I've ever, I don't know. I guess if I've done a big sale, but most of the time it's hardly anything, and it's like, I definitely think that's worth paying more to be protected for sure in
Right.
case something goes wrong.
Right.
So,
And I think we've both used at least some sort of a recovery method. So I know I've used the goods and services PayPal recovery at least twice. One, because, like I said, the buyer or the seller just totally ghosted me, never sent anything. So I was able to go back and get my money. And then another time, a seller poorly packaged something and it broke in shipping. So I was able to get some of the money back that way. And you can do that partial. So, like, I bought 2 figures, they packaged them poorly. One of the figures broke, the other one didn't. So I was able to get the money back for the figure that did break, and then the seller was still able to get their money for the figure that was good. So it's just good on both ends. Protection, you should have it. You can also get your refunds through eBay. So if you buy on eBay, they have a similar process where you can say this was damaged or it wasn't as described, and things like that, so that you have that protection. Sometimes, though, when you have trades, that can get a little bit more dicey. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But at least for buying, always use goods and services. You'll see in the groups. I mean, if you stay on the groups for a week, you're going to probably see at least a few posts of, oh, watch out for this guy. They scammed me. Well, how did they scam you? I paid friends and family. That's kind of on you because you didn't put any protection on yourself. So all of that to say, always use goods and services. Always. Unless it's like Jordan and I, we'll send friends and family because I know where Jordan lives. If Jordan doesn't send me my toys, I'll go to his house and get my
Dakota
toys.
will come find me.
So
I've tried to scam Dakota a few times, but
Right.
it never works.
So now let's get into a little bit more of like retail buying. So you can always get your new figures, like whenever Hasbro releases them, you're going to have pre-order options. So you can pre-order from Hasbro. If it's an exclusive, you get it from Target, Walmart, Walgreens. There's some other like offshoots of not major retails, kind of like Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth. Those kind of places will have those pre-orders usually. And they'll sometimes have some of those newer figures too. But if it's a super popular figure that is going to sell out, like, I mean, I imagine that the new Spider-Mans that they've announced, although they're still available at some retail locations, like Big Bad Toy Store, I think still has some in stock. Hasbro even has some in stock. I imagine those are going to sell out eventually. So those are ones that you would want to pre-order. Sometimes you can kind of gauge what's going to sell out and what's not. Like, I think that the Bone Breaker Wave, I think that one's a safe bet to say that you'll be able to find that when it's released, whereas the new retro Spider-Man stuff can sometimes be a little bit more tricky. But try to be that person that's a little bit more proactive, that when a figure comes out, like, let's take the Doctor Strange that was a Walgreens exclusive, or not a Walgreens, a Walmart exclusive. He was up for pre-order for a long time, and still, whenever that figure is released, you're going to have people in the group saying, like, oh, looking for this figure, because it's sold out now, like, looking for this figure for retail plus shipping. And like, maybe you're going to find somebody that, like, oh, I ordered an extra just because I wanted to check the paint apps and keep the one that has better paint apps, and I'll sell you this one that's maybe got some slight defect. Maybe you'll get that, but also you had that chance to get retail plus shipping. So that's always your safest bet, is to make sure you pre-order those figures.
Yeah, and I would say be sure to always check if you can get it at retail.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, sometimes if you don't do your research and, it's available, say, on Amazon or Target, but you end up paying maybe double because someone is trying to flip it. So I think, yeah, definitely check out those sites that we talked about. Really, wherever carries Legends, and just keep your eyes peeled for when things get restocked, or
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times people will post in the groups like, hey, this is back up. And I would say patience is usually the key with a lot of those, because sometimes I know, if things go up for pre-order at 1 o'clock,
Yeah.
some people
Sometimes you have a job.
some people, unlike us, have jobs where we can't they can't do that. So it makes sense that happens, but a lot of the time, yeah, we've seen figures that people end up trading. I think when I first got the Gunslinger Spawn, when that came out, I traded him for 3 Build-A-Figures,
Right.
which is pretty crazy. But now Gunslinger Spawn is just all over, and nobody would do that deal. So I don't know. Be patient. Don't always trade top dollar for something that is just came out, unless you can get it at retail, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. And that's even with some of those retail figures, like it helps to have your own smaller community of collectors, like some people that maybe like, I mean, if you're brand new to the game, it's going to be challenging, but after you've kind of been in the groups, you've maybe bought and sold some stuff. You can find some people like Jordan and I have a few people that we regularly trade and sell to. And Jordan lives in Iowa. I live in Wisconsin. We've got a friend that lives out in Florida. Other people kind of scattered around so that when something comes out at retail, we can kind of all be looking and finding those figures in different spots, because there's been times where Jordan gets a wave super early. He's able to pick up some extras for me. I'm able to find some stuff, pick up some extras for him. So having that smaller group that you can reach out to rather than just making a post in the Facebook groups of looking for this figure for retail plus shipping, like chances are it's going to be hard. Like some people will help you out, but like for me personally, like if I paid retail plus shipping for a figure, I'm going to want at least a little bit more than that, because you're kind of like costing me the trouble of having to package up a figure, ship it out, rather than you have being proactive. So something to keep in mind of like build your own community that's not necessarily a Facebook group of 5,000 other people. So yeah, keep that in mind. I at least, and I know Jordan's the same way, I don't know if I've ever paid over retail for a new figure. Patience is definitely a key when buying, because you'll be able to find something at some point. Like I know, even for something that's been out for a while, that's like a super hot, high ticket item, like Jordan was really looking for the Retro Vision. He's going to use that for a cake topper at his wedding. If you have wedding gifts you'd like to send Jordan, please do so.
I'd gladly take them.
But that Retro Vision is sitting at like 100 plus sealed, maybe like 90 loose. So Jordan was about ready to pull the trigger and spend what it caught, like the actual market value, which there's nothing wrong with market value. That's what you should be trying to get. But there's always going to be those people out there that are willing to do a trade or willing to sell a little bit lower. So then, I mean, I talked Jordan off the ledge from
Dakota talked me down, and I think
Yep.
I got it more in the 70 range,
Right.
which is a little more reasonable.
Yeah. So Jordan was able to save quite a bit of money just by having a little bit of patience. Not even like he didn't have to wait months for it. He just had to wait like it was like almost hours,
Yeah.
less than a day. He was able to find something for a little bit less. It's not always going to be the case, but if you have patience, either it's going to get re-released or you're going to be able to find somebody in the groups or marketplace that's selling it for a little bit lower than the market value. So that's something else to keep in mind too when buying, is patience is a virtue.
Well, yeah, because things right when they come out, if they're sold out, people will be selling them sometimes for, double, maybe even triple at retail.
Right.
And usually that's like the peak of the value, right? Because a lot of the time, we've seen this with many figures. I think it's re-released, the price comes down. So yeah, definitely if you happen to miss the pre-orders or can't find it, I mean, I guess if you're like, I don't care, I want
Right.
this figure, you collect the way you want to.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the prices will come down.
Yeah.
And again, this is a part we're also doing research. I don't know when we're going to talk about things, I guess, to know. I know you told me about the eBay sold listings and Action Figure 411.
Yeah. I think we'll definitely get into that
Okay.
with the selling selling
right.
aspect of it. But that is a good point, and that'll kind of tie into one of Jordan's pillars of doing your research and knowing the value of what you have. I think on the last thing on exclusives,
Pillars. I like that.
yeah, one of your pillars.
Pillars of wisdom.
Yes. So yeah, I guess the last thing I have on the exclusives is if you're questioning whether or not you want an exclusive, I would lean towards pre-ordering that exclusive because I have down as one of my examples is the Hasbro PulseCon Retro Venom. I think a lot of people kind of started hating on it because of the cell shading. They didn't really like it, but then once it came out, it was in hand. People ended up really liking it. Like a lot of people had it in their top 10 figures of the year. Jordan and I have it in our top 10 all time. I think we both had that, right? Or was it just me?
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah, so ended up being a great figure, but a lot of people were very skeptical about it. It sold out at PulseCon, and Jordan and I bought it for $30. I wish we would have bought multiple because as soon as it came out, it went from $30 up to $100, and it's still sitting at around $100. So I would always lean towards pre-ordering if you're able to, because some of those exclusives have the potential to skyrocket in value after it comes out, and it's going to make it a little bit more challenging to find, or at least for Jordan and I, like where we don't want to be paying $100 for a Retro Venom, it would be much more challenging for us to find that. And even like my patience kind of idea, here we'd still be waiting because I haven't seen that Venom for really less than $70 loose ever. So, have a little bit of, and like if you do get that Venom in hand and you decide, you know what, actually I don't want this, then you've got that Venom that has now skyrocketed in price and you can sell it or trade it or something like that. Or you can be one of those collectors that sells it for retail plus shipping and make somebody's day. And then you don't have to worry about like, oh, I lost money on something I don't want. Sometimes you will have those figures that are exclusives that kind of end up flopping. But then even there, that's patience. And maybe we could talk about that with selling is sometimes a figure that flops right away ends up gaining value down the road. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about the power of buying lots, Jordan?
Oh, yes. There is certainly power in buying lots. So I guess kind of what we see a lot are people, and this happens, life happens. It's like, hey, I need to make some money quick, or it's like, hey, I'm getting out of Legends. Maybe my wife told me to stop. Who knows? But a lot of the times, yeah, some people will post. I mean, I think the Doctor Strange wave came out, if I remember that, and somebody was selling the whole wave, or most of the whole wave with the Build-A-Figure for wasn't it like $90 or something?
I think so, yeah.
Which
like less than retail.
Yeah. So I jumped on that, and Dakota and I several times have seen lots, and again, that's kind of where just doing your research comes in, because you can buy a lot, and what's cool if you get several figures is that some of them, if you want to keep them, you can. You can sell the ones you don't want, make some money back, or you could just sell them all. But again, that's also something that I think takes some of that patience, where some things don't sell right away. And I guess we could get into that when we talk more about selling. But, and this is the point too where I'd say if you're in it to make some money or make some trades, like you do need to make initial investments. You can't just start. I mean, you got to get some capital, I guess, to start trading or to start selling, and you might be in the hole for a little bit. But as time goes on, hopefully that deficit gets smaller.
Yeah. And
sometimes.
And lots are a great way to do that because, like Jordan said, he was able, I think we kind of went in on that lot together where we each paid half of it and then we took half the profits. But that will happen pretty frequently. And like whenever you see lots in the groups, sometimes people will try to get full value for their lots. Rarely is that ever going to happen because chances are people aren't, I mean, like maybe if you're a brand new person, you're just wanting to find everything in one fell swoop. But typically when you buy lots, it's going to be at a discount because somebody's trying to move a lot of figures in one sale. So you're going to get that discount on the figures. And then if you're trying to recoup that cost, because sometimes people just don't want to spend that time to like sell one figure, then one figure, then one figure, because it's probably not, you're never going to sell out a whole post unless you price super low. And even then, like maybe there's one figure that somebody doesn't want, but you're going to take a lot more time to sell figures individually to get a higher dollar than discount a full lot. And yeah, Jordan and I have both found some really good lots. Build-A-Figure parts especially, you can usually find pretty good lots with that. And yeah, that's a great way to like build up your trade bait, like Jordan was saying, or just kind of add to your own collection with like, I mean, I have the Venom up here on display behind us. That was part of a lot where it came with, I don't know, 10 at least other figures, and we were able to sell off 9 of those other figures. So we made money and I got a free figure out of it essentially. So yeah, the power of buying lots can be pretty helpful. Going off of those Build-A-Figure lots, I think Jordan and I have both had this experience of deciding whether it's more cost effective to buy a full complete Build-A-Figure or buy a Build-A-Figure piece by piece. And I guess what is your take on that, Jordan?
Well, for me, I kind of like the feeling of assembling the Build-A-Figure. I think it's kind of fun to have the pieces to hunt down. But if you're looking for, I guess it really depends though.
Yeah.
On the figure,
Yeah.
like if it and how it's selling, But there's some random ones like Apocalypse. His head is worth like 3/4 of what the figure itself is worth for whatever reason. So
same with the Lizard.
Yeah, the Lizard head is expensive and. It's like a third of the cost of the figure.
The left leg of the Gamerverse Abomination.
That's right. That's that's like the trinity of very, very high ticket Build-A-Figure items. So if you got one of those, you're in a good spot. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it does depend on the figure, and maybe depends again on kind of the whole patience thing. Like, do you want the figure? You just want it now. Or do you mind having a figure with no legs for a little while until you track down the pieces you're looking for? I think usually if you can have patience, you can find the pieces for cheaper.
Because, I mean, for example, I've had the head to Apocalypse. You've had the head to Apocalypse. You've had the two heads to the Lizard, I think. Maybe one. You've had at least 2 or 3 left legs to the Gamerverse Abomination. So, and all of those you paid well under market value for.
Yeah.
And you were able to make some good trades with those.
Yeah. So, I do think a lot of it does really come down to just being able to wait, keep your eyes peeled. If you don't necessarily, I don't know, usually you'll find someone who is willing to part with something for less than what it's worth. If you're willing to wait for it. So.
Yeah. And then I think, like Jordan said, it comes back to the researching, so knowing what each individual part is. So if you really want to complete the Lizard, you can search up what each of those parts is going to cost you, kind of add that up, look at what a complete Lizard is going to cost you, and I assume right now anyway that the complete Lizard Build-A-Figure is going to be more cost effective versus some other figures that you may be able to piece together for a little bit cheaper. And also finding pieces together from the same person. So if you're able to find kind of like 2 legs and an arm from one person, you only have to pay shipping once. That's going to be more cost effective than finding 7 Build-A-Figure parts from 7 different people where you're going to have to add on that shipping cost each time you get one single part. So be smart about how you're building your Build-A-Figures and how you're buying them. But it does come down to like your preference. If you really want to build that figure piece by piece, like Jordan said, that is fun to do. If you want to spend the extra money because it is fun, like some people like to buy sealed figures because it's more fun to open them up themselves, which I guess kind of segues into like, should you buy loose or sealed? And I think that's probably a personal preference for Jordan and I. We're mostly out-of-box collectors. You can kind of see the whole display behind me here is out-of-box. To the side here is some in-box. But largely our collections are loose. So when we're buying from somebody, we would ideally probably find it loose because you're going to pay a lot less money for a loose figure versus a sealed figure is going to run you at least $10 more typically. And sometimes like astronomically more. Like a loose lasher is going to cost you maybe $35. A sealed brand new lasher is going to cost you probably over $100. So be smart about that too. Don't pay the extra money just for a box just to open it and throw it away.
Unless you really want to open the box.
And some people are those in-box collectors where you just need the box. It needs to be sealed. It needs to be in good condition. But yeah, I mean, with Toy Biz, I love getting a Toy Biz in-box because I like the nostalgia of opening up a Toy Biz figure and kind of having that comic, the base, all of it's there. And that is fun. So I would pay a little bit more. I mean, I'm not going to do like the lasher difference where I'm going to buy a $30 figure for $100. But I mean, I would pay $30 for a $20 figure to be able to open it. So,
but Dakota, I see a lot of posts where people say they want toys that are smoke-free. What does that mean?
That's true. When you're buying, it's always a good idea to, if it matters to you, ask if your toy, if like the person you're buying from is selling you smoke-free toys, because Jordan and I have both been surprised to receive a box. You open it up and you get hit with a big cloud of smoky figure. So some people, like if you're smoking around your figures, that's on you. Whatever you want to do, you probably don't care. But for Jordan and I, who don't smoke cigarettes, that's a little bit bigger of an issue. I know some people kind of argue that weed smoke doesn't like have as big of effect as cigarette smoke does. I still would prefer my figures to just be completely smoke-free because all of my figures are going to be smoke-free. But
there can be some advantages. I mean, I've had it where if you ask, is it smoke-free? They say no. Then you can say, well, maybe we'll talk the price down a little bit. And that's worked because there are methods to de-smoke your toys.
Mm-hmm.
Our tried and true is the the dish soap bubble bath.
Mm-hmm.
Soak for 30 minutes, do some scrubbing, let them dry. Ziploc bag with a dryer sheet, maybe set them out on the windowsill.
Yeah.
You may have to do that a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I
you got to do that a couple times.
I have a pair that I think are just now passable for smoke-free. Like now that I've cleaned them, and like I want to be able to put them away and like store them with my other figures. But before this weekend, I've had them for probably several months, and like I wasn't like on top of it, like giving them a bath every night. But I gave them like probably 4 like Dawn dish soap baths, dryer sheet treatments, set them in the windowsill to air out, and they still kind of had that smoke smell, and I didn't want to put those with my other figures to like spread the smell. So sometimes you're able to get that smell out right away, like first wash, no problem. Sometimes it's going to linger, so that is kind of the risk you run of purchasing a smoky figure. But you are usually able to get it cheaper, and that's kind of one of those things where you would go back to that goods and services as if you had asked like, hey, is this smoke free? And they're like, yeah, it is. You buy it. This is obviously not smoke free. You're going to be able to tell. You may be able to like return it, get your money back, or maybe get some refund for that. But yeah, always be sure to ask, because it is unfortunate when you get surprised and you're like, oh, dang, I should have asked. I forgot about it. And then you end up with figures that you need to add a little bit of extra work into.
I agree.
All right.
I think, do you think that covers
I
what
think
you
so.
have for buying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have any other thoughts. I guess the other thing I think we talked about a little bit was, what about it, like an older figure?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, if it's an older figure and you post saying, hey, I want to buy this for retail, that's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
You might get some laugh emojis. Some
Yep.
people post like, come on, dude. So,
I mean, especially with those higher, like a retro Spider-Man, like the first retro Spider-Man that came out, people that post looking for that retail shipping they're just insane, because nobody's going to sell it. I mean, one of you out there listening maybe is like, oh, I would sell it for retail plus shipping because I'm a good collector and that's what collecting is about. Good for you, but the market does not reflect your evaluation of that toy, because really the market price for a retro Spider-Man sealed is going to be $100+. And somebody looking for that at retail plus shipping, you're just going to be looking forever because you're not going to find it that. And you're also not going to find that figure at retail again because it's been out for several years. It's gone through retail, it's gone through circulation, and it's out. They're not going to reissue that same figure again. You're going to have to find that either in the groups or on eBay or something like that.
Yeah, and that there are some exceptions to the rule of, if you missed a pre-order, being patient, waiting for it, because Spider-Man has actually gone up kind of steadily. But that's another kind of rare one. That doesn't really happen a ton. Like, I think of like the Miles Morales Spider-Man. Remember when that first came out? If people couldn't or Kang, if people couldn't find that, that became more valuable. But now, I mean, if you want a Miles, you could get one for, I think, pretty quickly.
Yeah, and same with Kang. I mean, Kang was out. He was through all the discount stores and finished. Then he showed up in the MCU. People decided they really want a Kang, and then Marvel reissued it, which I think is rare. I wouldn't bank on Marvel reissuing all the figures that come out, but it is possible that they could do that for those more popular figures. But yeah, I mean, I think that wraps up our buying. Ready to move into selling?
I'd love to.
All right, awesome. So our first order of advice is going to be the same as with buying. Whenever you're selling, always sell with goods and services. Sometimes you'll see in the group, some people say, oh, selling friends and family, I've got tons of references, trust me. Like, I still don't really give that the time of day because they'll try to say that they want to do friends and family because they don't want to pay the taxes on goods and services, because if you make over 600, but that's if you make over 600 profit, you're going to have to pay that. So, I mean, chances are if you're just a small time collector, you're just buying and selling your own personal collection, you're probably not going to reach that $600 profit. And I personally don't see that as a good sign when I see somebody posting that they accept only Cash App and PayPal goods or PayPal friends and family because they're trying to avoid taxes. I would recommend you stay away from those people, and I recommend you don't be one of those people when you're selling your action figures or figures, comics, anything. You always use goods and services if you're on the Facebook groups, because that's just going to make you more reputable, especially if you're a new person to the group. Don't make it harder for yourself by offering those other forms of payment. Just do the tried and true goods and services, and you're probably going to have some more success than if you tried to save a buck. And really, that often is only all you're saving is if you do friends and family. You're going to get that 6% back, but it's not worth it.
But Dakota, if I'm selling my toys, how do I know what to sell them for?
So that's where your pillar of research comes in. So my first method of research came from actionfigure411.com. That's what I used when I first started out. It was pretty helpful because my very first post in the group, I posted like all my figures. I was like, oh guys, I'm glad to found a community of other collectors. Like, here's my collection. And then some people commented like, oh, are you selling those? Like, I want this one and that one and this one. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about it. But like, I mean, I guess I don't have a big attachment to that one. I would sell it. And they're like, well, how much? I was like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. You tell me how much, but then you have to trust that person to be honest about like, oh, it's actually this much. And you're selling a grail that should be worth $400 and they got it for 10. So actionfigure411.com is the first place I went, and that has like every legend ever made, like all the way back from Toy Biz Series 1 up to current, like things that are on pre-order right now they have on there. And they have it set so it'll pull the eBay listings from what's currently listed and what has also sold. So you always want to check that sold listing, because eBay, you can list anything for any price. But sold is kind of what the market value is. That's what people are actually willing to pay for that figure. And even with the Action Figure 411, it's not 100% reliable because sometimes some other figures will slip in there and throw off the average. So I know when I was trying to sell my blob, they had some of the figures from the wave in there, like in that average. So like it was like, oh, Yellow Jacket sold for $10, so like add that to the average, and Juggernaut Loose sold for this much. And that wasn't so helpful because Blob himself is worth 200, 250, and Yellow Jacket himself is worth maybe $20. So you have to go in and actually do some checking there. I personally like checking eBay solds because you can go into eBay, search like Marvel Legend. Like we'll take Silver Surfer here. This is the early Hasbro Silver Surfer. I can go into eBay, type in the search bar, Marvel Legends Silver Surfer, put the year, whatever year he came out, so 2006, and then that will pull up the listings that they have currently, like who's selling this figure right now. And then you can go up in the filters and check off sold listings only, and then you can see what that figure is actually sold. So sometimes it'll be a green number, it'll say Silver Surfer sold for $20 loose, and you can check those two because, like we said, there's going to be a difference between a loose figure and a sealed figure. This Silver Surfer is loose, so I need to be checking to make sure that I'm only comparing him to the loose figures. And then if there's like a slash through it, so like if you see $100 with a slash through it, that means that they were asking $100, but they had like the or best offer, and somebody offered less than 100. So it didn't sell for 100. It sold for less. We don't know exactly how much less, but not 100. So then you want to look for those actual sold solid listings. So
yeah. And the other thing to remember too is if you do sell on eBay, you have to pay fees.
Yep.
And they take that out. So when you're pricing a figure, for me, I go a little bit lower for sure than eBay, because if you're asking, well, it sold for 60 on eBay, it's like, well, yeah, but the buyer made less than that. So,
right.
And then, yeah, like Dakota said, the other thing too would be make sure you're not checking what is the asking price, because that does, we see it a lot where people say, well, see, it's going for 250 on eBay. It's like, well, it hasn't sold for that, and I don't know if any of them have sold or will sell. So I guess at the end of the day, it's up to you how you want to price. If you are willing to wait, you can maybe put a higher price tag on something, and maybe it'll sell eventually. Other times, if you're wanting it to move, you can go lower.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a little, at least a bit below eBay, I think is a good standard.
Yeah. And I think kind of that, like understanding that range, so you kind of know like this is what the eBay sold listings for, so I maybe need to sell it for a few bucks less. And then kind of from there, you can make your decision of, I want this to sell today, like I want to post this and have it sold and ship it out tomorrow. Or you can decide like, actually, I really like this Silver Surfer. I wouldn't mind selling him, but I don't really want to. So for some of those instances, I'll actually price above what it's selling for, just because then if it does sell, then I'm a little bit more happy about like, okay, well, I wanted to keep it, but I mean, for an extra $10, like I'll let it go. And you can kind of make those decisions, but doing that research, because I mean, for example, like there's some guy in the group right now currently that he had posted his box set of Young Avengers and he wanted to sell it for, I think, $250. And there was a lot of people in the group like saying like, hey man, like you're way overvaluing this. Like here's a bunch of the sold listings. And he's like, no, look, see, here's what it is on eBay. And it was one of those, like the asking price was $250. So he's like, that's what I'm going to list it as too. It hasn't sold for $250, and that listing has probably been there forever because nobody's going to spend that money on it. But he didn't do the right research, and then he ended up lowering the price, still overvaluing it. But maybe he's one of those guys that's like, I'd like to keep this box set. I don't actually want to sell it, but if somebody wanted to pay me triple the price, I would sell it.
Right.
Which I understand, because then you just go buy 3 more of those same box sets.
And the other thing to remember too is when you're selling via PayPal, or I guess even eBay, you got to remember there's shipping costs.
Yep.
There's even on PayPal, there's fees. So, if you kind of price your figure at 50, but you got to pay $6 to ship it and then $4 in fees, that's $10 out. So you don't want to be surprised, like, oh shoot, I only made $40 on that. Right. So keep those in mind too. I think we both keep like tallies of what we sell, what we buy, just to kind of keep track. It just sort of gives you perspective, and you can kind of read the market better there and say, oh yeah, this was selling for this then, and maybe I should price it. If you happen, like for me, I've come across, is it 2 Lizard Build-A-Figures I've sold, I think, and then like you can get a feel for, okay, what was the value before?
Right.
What is it now? That kind of thing. So good
Yeah.
things to keep in mind as far as pricing goes.
Yeah. And yeah, keeping in mind those extra fees that you're going to have to pay with the shipping and whether you're including that in your price of the figure. So usually I'm going to, like, when I make a sales post, I'm going to say, like, here's the figures, here's how much they cost, and shipping is, like, at the buyer's expense, or, like, add shipping, meaning that the buyer is going to, like, purchase Silver Surfer for $20, and then if it's a loose figure, I'll typically sell one loose figure. The shipping will be about $6. If it's a boxed figure or several figures, I'll usually make that around $10. Do your research there. Like, if you're selling something really heavy, like maybe a 3-pack, or like if you're selling the Hellfire Club, it's like a bigger box set, you're probably going to be more in that at least $10, maybe up to $15 range. So make sure that, like Jordan said, you're not being surprised. And I guess even with shipping, we can kind of go into how we ship. So whenever I buy a figure, or at least, I mean, I don't know, I kind of buy a few figures. So for a lot of the figures, I've never had to, like, purchase a box to ship, because I'll save my boxes that I get from, like, buying figures or lots or things like that, or even new figures from Hasbro or Target or GameStop. I'll save those boxes, save the packing material, stick it in the closet, so that when I sell a figure, I'm able to pull that out, repackage. I'll take the labels off or cover the labels with a new label, and then ship it out that way. Or if it's somebody's just buying a single figure. So, like, for example, if I was going to sell something cheaper, like maybe that, like a Venom that was like a normal size, maybe not Venom since he's a little bit more expensive, but like one of the newer Spider-Mans. Like if I was going to sell the Mach 1 armored retro Spider-Man, that's a normal figure. There's not anything too crazy going on with him. I can, like, Ziploc him with his accessories so that they don't get lost, and I'll put that in a bubble mailer, and I'll ship that out, maybe with some extra bubble wrap in there just for some extra protection. But I've never had any issue with sending any figures in a bubble mailer. I've never had any issue receiving figures in a bubble mailer. The only issue, like I mentioned earlier, was I got a damaged figure because they put it in a regular envelope, like just like a you would send paper in. So there was no padding at all. They didn't put any extra padding in there. They just shipped it and it broke, which I could have told you it was going to break if they shipped it that way. So bubble mailer for a regular figure. But if you're sending like a Archangel, or like I'm looking at Man Spider, those are odd shaped figures that putting those in a bubble mailer is going to be risky. Like this Year 2 Batman, I don't think he'd fit in a bubble mailer, but I would never send that cape in a bubble mailer, because that hard plastic is going to be more likely to break or crack, or it's not going to end up at the destination how it left my place. So those you want to put in boxes. Always put a boxed figure in a box.
Absolutely. That's a big one.
Yes.
Never put a boxed figure in a big mailer, because,
Right.
you know, you can blame it on the USPS all you want, but it's like, come on.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. And
box for sure.
even with, like, I mean, sometimes you'll even buy a boxed figure, like a brand new figure from retail, and Walmart or Target will ship it to you in a bubble mailer. And I mean, you'll always see on the groups people are upset by that.
Do you remember? I've got in the background here my black and red Batman statue that I ordered from Walmart. And I think I sent you this. I got the confirmation at work, and they left it at my apartment's mailroom. And it wasn't in anything. It was just the box with a sticker on it.
Right.
So,
which an inbox collector would have
Right.
lost it, because you've just put a sticker on the actual figure box. Like it wasn't in
and
anything.
it was just handled, not inside anything. So,
Right. I mean,
definitely don't do that.
somehow you've had Grubhub deliver your figures, right?
Yeah, Walmart, they use DoorDash in a weird way to send stuff out sometimes. So
I've never had that personally, but for some reason you've had DoorDash people delivering your
my toys,
your action figures, which is crazy. So bubble mailers are okay if they're a regular, like, lower price figure. Like usually if it's a $50 or more, like I've got that loose Venom, the retro Venom down there. That one I would send in a box, because it's going to be above that $50 mark. Even though he's a regular sized shaped figure, probably would be fine to send in a bubble mailer. I just want that extra protection, because like if I send that retro Mach 1 armored Spider-Man and for some reason something happened where he snapped in half in transit, okay, I'll refund you your $20. That's not that big a deal. But if the retro Venom snaps in half, I don't really want to refund that $70 that I probably charged for it. So I'm going to have that extra protection and have the box with like extra bubble, extra paper, stuff like that to keep it from shifting.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I think that covers the shipping part of selling. Would you want to move on to kind of deciding when to sell in groups or eBay?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, typically I'm always going to start selling in the groups. Like that's going to be my first go-to because, like we said, you're going to have less fees because I think PayPal fees are around 6%, something like that. And then eBay fees are something around 16%. So you're going to keep more of your money by selling it in the groups. I also just kind of like that. Like I know who I'm selling it to, or at least you can put like more of a face to a name rather than on eBay where you're just going to get some random person bidding on your stuff and buying it.
Or like I've had, you have people buy your item and then ghost you on eBay.
That's true.
I wish I didn't know you could do until, what was it, Lizard? I was trying to sell Lizard. I think I sold them twice. Mm-hmm. Well, 3 times, but 2 times. But each time someone won it, and then they never paid me.
Right.
So there's that as well. If you did that in the group, you could make a post and say, hey, so-and-so bought this, but your claim, whatever. So I guess that's a whole other thing, too, when it comes to people saying, can you hold this for me? Because we've had it where it's like, oh, I get paid next week. It's up to you to decide if you want to do that.
Yeah, I personally don't do those holds because I've had people where they're like, oh, yeah, I'll get you your money like next week. And then I'll like set that box aside. I don't sell it to other people. And then next week comes and I never hear from them. So I typically will just say like, yeah, if it's here next week, totally, it's all yours. But I'm only going to mark it as sold when I have the money in hand. I'm not going to like say it's sold before it is because I've had issues with that before. And I think going back to your Lizard is a good example of deciding whether to sell in the groups or on eBay. I know like when we're trying to decide where you should take Lizard was selling higher on eBay than he was in the groups because he is that higher ticket item. Sometimes collectors, like we said, you have the patience. Collectors don't want to spend that top dollar for their figure. So you'll take it to eBay for some reason. I don't know if the eBay people aren't on the groups or vice versa, but the groups people are definitely on eBay checking the prices. But the Lizard was hopefully going to be selling higher on eBay. Same, I've done that with my retro Spider-Man because I also don't feel as comfortable selling a retro Spider-Man for whatever it was, like 110 at the time. Because I was like, I don't want to sell this in the groups because like it just like I don't want to ask them to pay that much. Like maybe they would have, and I should have, but I don't mind taking it to eBay because, like I said, it's like a faceless name that you're letting people bid, and then they'll bid up to the market price, and then you are able to sell it that way.
Well, and yeah, a big thing with that is kind of your personal reputation. Like in the groups, you do want to keep a good reputation, like we said, by if you want to ship things well, you want to ship out soon, you want to make prompt payments, you want to disclose any defects with the toy before you sell it. And then also, if you're asking really high prices for everything, people will just kind of eventually probably be like,
right,
you're not really selling things for reasonable prices. So,
yeah.
And the other thing I would say too with selling is a lot of the times people will make you offers, say, well, would you take this? We don't really get offended or upset if it's like low. Some people, it seems, take it kind of personally, like, oh, wow, how dare you offer that? But it's like, and that usually happens when people don't post their prices.
Yes.
We would encourage you definitely to post your prices.
Always post your price. I get so annoyed when people don't post their price and they're like, PM me for a price, and I'll say, okay, well, how much is Silver Surfer? And they're like $50. I'm like, all right, pass, because you're asking top dollar. If I would have known you were asking top dollar, I never would have messaged you in the first place. And just save us all the time and post your prices.
Yeah, That would be another big. Woo! We got a toy falling. Man down. Not sure who it was.
Goliath down on the bottom.
Goliath.
So yeah, I think that selling on eBay is a good segue too into flipping. So, like we said, when you buy the lots and are able to sell off that lot, I personally try to keep a tally of who I bought it from and sell it in a different group. And maybe that's like shady, but like I also just think it's kind of rude to be like, oh, I just bought your figure, now I'm going to sell it for more. Because like you are able to find those good deals and like you're willing to put in a little bit more work to sell them for a little bit more money to recoup some of your costs, maybe get that one figure that you wanted but not the others. So I don't know. I just tried to avoid that situation by being in multiple groups. So like if I buy from group A, I bought a lot, I'll go to group B and sell that lot there. Just because I've seen people where like somebody was selling Spider-Man, they bought it for $50 because it was a good deal, and then they turned around as soon as they got it, reposted in the groups, and they were selling it for 70, and then that same person comments like, "Oh, you bought my Spider-Man for $50." They're like, "Yeah, I bought it for exactly what you were asking for, and I know I can get more money out of it." So like, they didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but it just kind of creates that awkward situation where that's where I think eBay can kind of help you get a little bit more value out of your action figures by saving you that awkward interaction.
Yeah. I think that makes sense, and I don't think I mean, unless you're like talking to someone and you convince them to drive the price down,
right,
and be like, "Oh, this isn't worth much," and they're like a new
yes,
person to the group, and then you take advantage of them. Like, I think that's pretty bad.
yeah,
But as far as like, I don't think you're ripping people off by just buying figures for what people are asking, and if you sell them for more, I mean, there's literally people on the groups who that's what they do.
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
as their
that's
job.
how we're able to collect
Right.
so much too, is we're able to do a lot of this flipping where we'll like buy, sell, trade. And I mean, my collection has grown immensely, and the amount of money I've spent on that collection is super small compared to the amount of value that I've added to the collection. And the same with you too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, flipping is definitely good. I mean, that's kind of one of the bullet points we have is like, are you a scalper? And like this, I feel like could be its own episode too.
Maybe we'll do a future one on the flipping concept. And
Right. Because I think
perceptions.
people assume that flipping equals scalping. And I don't think people will just, as soon as you upset somebody, that you're a scalper. I think you have to have a little bit more of a brain to understand like that's not scalping.
And you got to put in the time and
Yeah.
the research and the effort, right?
Right.
So it's
And I mean, going back to the pre-orders and stuff, like if you wanted to flip your Venom, because I mean, if you were able, I think Venom maybe was a different example because I think you were limited to one, maybe limited to two, but I think it was just one. So you couldn't have gotten a second. But if you could have gotten a second and you sold your Venom that you bought for $30 for $100 because that's what the market says, I mean, I don't necessarily have that big of an issue with it because it was there for people to pre-order. And I mean, maybe it sold out, so maybe it's a little bit of a bad example, but like the Baron Zemo that was a Walgreens exclusive, like that was available pretty much for everybody for a while. And then when it came out, some people tried to sell it for 40. Everybody cries scalper, even though they could have just pre-ordered it. You're never going to find that figure in a Walgreens store. Like, I'll tell you that right now. Like, there's probably 2 people in the world that could have found that at Walgreens. But you're going to get called a scalper because you're trying to flip it and make a few bucks off of it. I don't think that's the case, but, you know, flipping, like we said, lots can sometimes be helpful to build up your own capital to be able to do those pre-orders to get you those new figures.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I'm trying to think as far as selling goes. What other?
Yeah, I mean, always sell with goods and services. If you're on the groups, try not to be a jerk and like talk somebody down and then resell it right in their face. Decide what you're going to sell, as in terms of like, here's the list of my priced figures. These prices are including shipping, or shipping is extra. Knowing how much to charge for shipping, like we said, usually, at least for us, we're kind of in, like I said, Iowa, Wisconsin, we're in the middle. So it's like $6 for one loose figure, $10 for a sealed larger figure. But kind of figure that out, and you'll figure that out after you sell a few times, make a few trips to the post office. You'll know what your prices are going to be if you're going to ship internationally. That you definitely, I think, would want to make sure that you have the buyer cover that, because I mean, I've shipped some things to Indonesia, Malaysia, and shipping was like $20, but then for some reason shipping to Canada was going to be like $25, $45. So you definitely want to make sure that you're kind of covering those bases, and making sure that you're not going to get surprised with like and I don't think you ever need to really feel pressure of like somebody message you and says, hey, I want to buy your figure. And you say, all right, cool. They send you $20 and they're like, all right, now ship it to Canada. And you're like, whoa, hold on. I'm not going to like, I don't think that's necessarily an issue of, that's not wrong to say like, hold on, I don't want to ship it to Canada now that you've said that. Like, I forgot to post that in the group. Like, you're not locked in, committed to spend $45 to ship a figure to Canada just because you sold it. Just refund them their money, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Good. Move on to trading.
Well, yeah, we've got the B and the S. Time for the T. The big T of trading. So trading, an important part with that is going to be references. As we said, a good way to build references is by buying and selling. So if you have a track record of having sold some stuff, you can say, hey, I'm obviously reliable, have a reputation. Some groups have like sub groups where you post for feedback, and people give you feedback, and you can give feedback, so that people just kind of, you don't have to go through the process of like, well, contact so-and-so, I did a trade with Dakota, talk to, like, that just takes time. What I do is I just have several screenshots of posts or confirmation messages, or someone saying, hey, I got this, or someone in the group saying, shout out to Jordan for this trade. That way I can just boom, 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 send somebody 4 of them and be like, hey, here's my references. So some people will ask for that. Some people won't. Sometimes.
I would personally, like, if you're doing your first trade or doing any trade, I would always ask for those references unless you've dealt with that person before.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, you can check and see like, oh, this person's an admin of the group. Like, chances are an admin is going to be pretty reliable.
Yeah, and you can also look people up by name in the group. So if they're pretty active, if they've done deals, like, but yeah, it's always helpful. It's just another layer of protection to just say, hey, you got references, here's mine.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
It does get a little bit more tricky in the trading section because with buying and selling, like we said, you should use goods and services. I personally don't use PayPal with my trades. Some people will say like, okay, we're going to be trading these 2 figures. Let's each send each other $50 goods and services. That way, if you don't ship, I can get my money back. And I don't know. I personally don't know how that works, because I don't know why they couldn't just both say that they got scammed and then they get their money back, even though you had already sent your toy.
Well, yeah, it's almost like a triple factor.
Right.
Which, I don't know. For me, that's just another step that I don't use. Yeah, I don't think either of us really do that. Yeah. I just get like, hey, do you have a reputation in the groups?
And feel it out too. Like, see if it's sketchy or not, because I mean, like, see how they're talking. Like, if they're kind of using that, like their grammar is all messed up. Like, maybe English is their second language, but also scammers use that messed up grammar to kind of weed out smart people, so that they're more likely to get the scam.
Yeah.
So feel it out. See if it feels sketchy.
And if you haven't done a trade, well, I don't know. I'm trying to remember my first trade, if I had to send first. But if you haven't done any trading or selling, that is a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, as somebody who's traded quite a bit in the groups and seen that there's like untrustworthy people out there, I think if I was dealing with somebody doing their first trade, I would ask them to ship first, and almost, I mean, maybe even ask to like have them ship it, I receive it, and then I will ship your trade, like my portion of the trade out, just because like you and I have done probably it's got to be coming up on over 100 or hundreds of buying, selling, trading deals. So like, I mean, our reputation is pretty well established with several people, where like, I think that's a fair ask to have somebody like, I want to receive your package before I send yours out, because I think you've gotten packages before, and I don't know if it was a trade or a sale, like somebody sold you. They said they were sending a figure and they sent you granola bars.
Right. And then they were like, I don't know what happened. It was kind of a weird situation. I don't really know. But they ended up sending me back my stuff. And I think I still got the granola bars.
Yeah,
So,
which I think is lucky. I'm surprised that you got your figures back from that.
yeah. So, and then the other thing too, when selling or trading or even buying, always ask for or send tracking information. For the most part, I used to just like type out the info, but I just send a picture of the receipt.
I always send a picture, yeah.
Just to show like this, I didn't just fabricate this number. Sometimes it has the date, it has when it should arrive, and then it's in their court to kind of track it, and they can see exactly where it's going and when it's going to get in.
Yeah.
So
I personally like getting, when they type it out, but the picture of the receipt is a little bit more reassuring, because it means they've gone to the post office, they've given it to the person has given them the receipt, versus, I mean, sometimes you can use like different pirate ship or different selling things like that, or like ways to ship, which I don't think Jordan or I use. You can maybe save a little bit of money. But when you do that and they take a picture of the tracking number that they got from their own printer, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've shipped it yet, because there's been several times where, I think it's mostly with purchases, where I'll purchase something, they'll send me the tracking that they've printed, and then several days later I go to check the tracking and it still hasn't shipped yet, and then I have to message them and be like, hey, what's up with this? Like, why hasn't it shipped yet? So I always send a picture of the receipt just so they know that like this has been shipped out, it's on its way. And then it's also easier for me because I just take a picture, I crop it down to their section of the tracking info, and I don't have to type out those numbers, because my fat thumbs, I would probably mistype it and then they'd get worried.
And they'll say you're a scammer.
Yep.
Yeah, so also then just ship as soon as, usually you agree on a day to ship. Or if you're selling, try to ship as soon as you can. You don't want to be that person who doesn't ship for 2 weeks and then it turns into a whole thing. Same with trading. But I'm pretty understanding. Like, I know life happens. Some people, it's like, hey, I had to stay late at work, but it starts to get like weird, scammy territory when it's like you're getting those excuses for like a week solid of like, oh, my car broke. Or my wife's pregnant.
Had that one with the gunslinger, right?
Yeah. Oh, my wife's in labor. Like that. Those are the common ones: are broken car, pregnant wife in labor, and then I've gotten a lot of COVID ones. I've got COVID, so that's a convenient one. So you should be able to just kind of feel those out.
Yeah.
Like the difference between, oh, this is life, or oh, this person's kind of.
They're just going to always have an excuse.
So,
right.
Try to agree on the same day, I would say.
And like Jordan said, like sometimes life happens. Sometimes they just forget to send like, I know for a fact right now that I have a figure. It may have gotten there already, or it's in transit right now. The receipt's in my car. I just forgot to, like, I was busy. I was rushing to work. Like, I put the receipt in the cup holder. I was like, I'll send a picture of that later. Never sent the picture of the tracking. That person's probably going to end up getting that figure before they get a tracking info for me. So, if they would ask me, I would run out to the car, get it, because I don't want them to like worry or think that I scammed them. But don't just get that receipt from the post office, crumple it up, and throw it away. Hold on to your receipt. Like, I've got every receipt I've ever shipped in a box under the bed.
Really?
Well, also that's because like with the tax stuff coming up, like I want to be able to go back and say like if somebody's like, oh, why aren't you paying your taxes on this stuff? I'll be like, here's all my receipts of the shipping that I've done. I'm probably not going to add it up that way. Like, I'll just go into my credit card, type in the U.S. Post Office, take the total that I've sent, because I only ever ship anything that's action figure related. I don't really mail anything else. But then you deduct that from your profits, and then you're going to not have to pay as much in the taxes, because, I don't know if I'm ever going to cross that threshold, but I would assume, like, if we end up getting Galactus and decide not to keep him, that might push us over the threshold into the tax. But even then, I don't know. We'll see. Taxes will change. And
I've heard about people. There is that legislation that says if you make more than 600, right, you have to pay. But I've seen eBay even reacting to that, trying to get something changed there.
Right.
So
because I think it used to be like you had to make over like 20 or 30,000 before you had to pay taxes, which, I mean, maybe that's a bit excessive, but like, 600 is super low. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll make an update if that ever changes, but I wouldn't worry too much about it if you're just a casual trader. Like, I mean, we trade and buy, sell a lot, and I'm wondering if we'll even cross that threshold into the $600 profit. But I think the last thing we have on trading is always try to, like, unless you're trying to trade for something that you really want, we always try to trade up or try to trade something that's hot right now for something that's a little bit more stable. So what we mean by that, a good example was, like we've brought up several times, Jordan had traded a gunslinger spawn. At the time when Jordan had that gunslinger spawn, he was the hottest thing on the market at that point. Like, he had just come out, Target exclusive, nobody could find him. Jordan was able to find one. He didn't really have an attachment to Gunslinger, but there was other things that he wanted, so he was able to trade Gunslinger spawn for 3 complete Build-A-Figures. I would consider that trading up, because you took a $25 action figure and got Build-A-Figures that were probably, I mean, they weren't like crazy like Apocalypse and Lizard Build-A-Figures.
Like 100+ value though.
Right.
I mean,
so yeah, you took a $35 figure or a $25 figure and got like $100+ in return from that. And that person was able to find a figure that was super hard to find, and you were able to find other figures that you were more looking for. So that's an example of buying something that's hot right now and trading it for something that's a little bit more stable. So like those Build-A-Figures had been out. They were pretty well established. They weren't going to like fluctuate. They weren't going to go super high or super low. But that Gunslinger now is, I mean, it's not worthless, but it's back down to pretty much retail or less than retail, because there's been several new Gunslingers released. So you can find it pretty readily available now. And even that Gunslinger that you found is more available, because I think it was maybe like shipping stuff was messed up. But another good example of that is the Moon Knight. So as Moon Knight was starting to come out and hit Disney Plus, it was just ticking up and up and up and up. So you would, I mean, I personally would either sell or trade that Moon Knight for something that had been out for a while longer, that was a little bit more stable, or that's a good time to sell because it's super hot right now. I think give it a year or two, that Moon Knight is going to drop in price. Right now it's around 80, or at least last I checked, it was around like 80 to maybe even $100 sealed. I think we're going to see it come down. It's probably not going to ever come back down to retail, but it'll probably still drop back below or around 50, I would think, sealed. And people are going to end up losing those accessories that he came with, so that's going to bring the price down too, unless you're really looking for those complete. But me personally, I had a sealed Walgreens Moon Knight. I don't even remember what I traded him for. I think I traded him for some Build-A-Figures or something like that. So eventually I'll find him again loose, because most of my collection is loose, and I'll pay less than that price that he's at right now, where he's a little bit more hot. I think even same with like just like examples of good figures that, like, if I had one in box right now, I would probably try to sell it, because it's probably not going to stay hot forever. Like if I had a Netflix Daredevil, may have even missed that bubble, because there's a lot of hints and rumors, and I mean pretty much confirmed, like they've posted pretty much saying that they're going to be having more of that MCU style Daredevil coming out in the future. So I would be trying to get rid of that right now if I had one, to get to maximize my potential out of it. Any examples you have of trading up other than that? Or like trading hot figures?
The Moon Knight was a big one. Gunslinger, I think. Maybe Kang, when like
right
WandaVision was coming out. That he got kind of big right there, and I think now he's kind of gone back down a bit.
Leveled out. He was one that like shot up to 80 before Hasbro re-released him.
It helps to pay attention to what really like is happening in movies or comics
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
So
MCU for sure.
or just peeking ahead to say, well, what movie's coming out next? So that
So
kind of.
I mean, for me, I have done like I've stocked up a little bit on Ironheart and She-Hulk because She-Hulk is coming out later this year. Ironheart's coming out after that. So I don't anticipate this being as much of a rocket ship as the Walgreens Moon Knight was. Like that one shot way up really fast. I think these will end up going for more than retail. So then I'll be able to trade those for other figures that I'm looking for, or sell them to be able to buy like new pre-orders, something like that to recoup some costs. So yeah, being smart about your trades. But I mean, also just trade also for what you're looking for. You don't always have to get the best deal.
Yeah.
Even when you're buying too, like if it's something that you're really looking for, like, I mean, patience is a virtue, but also don't like wait so long that you never get your figure that you're really wanting.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, the collection is yours, you
Right.
know, unless you're just operating as a store and don't keep anything.
True.
But there are some figures that, like, maybe it's worth a lot, and you say, you know what, I'm going to keep it because I like it. Like this, I've got a Robin back here that I got in a lot for like $150. He alone is worth about $50, but I
At
like
least,
him.
yeah.
So I'm going to keep him. So at the end of the day, yeah, you've got to collect the stuff you want to collect, and some people might say you're crazy for paying a high price, but if you really want it, or if you really want to get rid of it for a certain price, or you really want to trade it for something, so be it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's also like, I guess this kind of applies to each aspect of the buy, sell, and trade is kind of having your bottom line, but also knowing when to be flexible with that bottom line. A lot of times, like Jordan and I, if we're going to be bidding on something on eBay, like I will text Jordan and say something about like, I'm going to be bidding on this figure. I'm not going to bid over $35 for it. Because sometimes when you're bidding on an eBay figure, you'd be like, I'll bid this much. Oh, somebody just beat me. I'm not going to let them beat me. I'm going to bid again. And you go back and forth and you kind of get lost in the like how much are you actually spending. And then similar, if you're going to sell, somebody tries to make you an offer of like, oh, will you sell it for $5 less? That's kind of up to you of like the value of this figure is like, I'd really like to sell it for this as my bottom line already. But then also knowing like, do I really want this figure or would I rather make the sale to get something else in the future? And then even still too, like I've had deals where like the person wasn't going to be, they didn't include the, like they were like, it's this much friends and family. And then when I messaged them, they were like, oh, pay the PayPal fees. So I was like, all right, here's what 6% of that is. And they're like, no, it's like $1 more or something like that. I was like, that's not 6% of what that is. And then like we went back and forth. I was like, you know what? Never mind. Like even though this is only less than $1, I don't need the figure. Like I just didn't want to buy it anymore. Like I was like, nah, I'm done. Like I don't really trust this interaction. Like if you can't math right, then I don't need your figure. So, you know, having those flexibilities, some of those hard lines, knowing when to use what. Yeah.
I think that
wraps it up.
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a crash course. I'm sure as soon as we get off this, we're going to think of 10 things that we should have added. But maybe that could be a future episode.
Right. Yeah.
Or we could dive more into, again, if you guys listen to this and maybe you're a first time or just getting into the buy, sell, trade game and you have questions or you have things you think of, like Dakota mentioned, feel free to comment or let us know somehow. We've also got the Strong Collectors email. You can shoot us an email.
I think that's just the strongcollectors@gmail.com.
So we're always welcome to feedback, and we're very excited to share our next episode with you.
Yes, we have our display set up, all of our McFarlane shelves. We don't quite have all of our McFarlanes displayed because Todd's got so much of our money, but so we pull some of these figures off and chat with Todd about them. He mentions them, pull them down, and he kind of talks in detail about why he chose certain figures and the way he did.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you guys to listen to that. I'll get to editing it so that you guys can hear the new reveals. He talks about Kickstarter. it's good stuff. Talks about the movie.
Yeah.
Lots to talk
Exciting.
about. Hopefully this helped you out. Like Jordan said, send us an email, or you can always go make a comment on YouTube if you're watching it there. Like we said, the Todd McFarlane interview, you're probably going to want to watch on YouTube. It's also, I mean, you can listen to it any way you want to. There'll just be parts where he's like showing off his collection and some figures that he's got around his office. So that's kind of nice to be able to see visually. But you can also listen to it in the car. We kind of try to do a little bit of describing what he's showing us. And, you know, I mean, you're going to know what a Violator looks like. You're going to know what a Billy Kincaid looks like. So either way will work. Leave comments on YouTube. Go to our Instagram at The Strong Collectors. You'll be able to see some of our what you gots, some of our figures that we've got on display, some of the figures we're playing with. And yeah, let us know what you like, what you think we should add. Like, comment, share, subscribe, tell everybody you know, post us in the groups so that more people see us. If somebody asks, hey, I want to sell off my collection, what should I do? Link this show. Tell them these guys have all the best advice and share us that way. So that's really our goal, is to be able to answer those questions when people come into the groups and say, like, how do I do this? What do I need to know? Hopefully this is everything you would ever need to know. And it's just a complete buy, sell, trade tutorial. And with that, stay strong.